My husband fired me in the middle of the hospital lobby while nurses, doctors, patients, board members, and security guards watched in stunned silence. He did not pull me aside. He did not lower his voice. He did not even pretend it was a private matter. He stood beneath the golden sign that read, Belmont Grace Hospital, adjusted the cuffs of his expensive navy suit, and said, Naomi, you are fired. Clear out your office before security does it for you. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. A nurse froze beside the reception desk with a patient file in her hand. 2 interns stopped near the elevators. The head of surgery stared at the floor like he wished the marble would open and swallow him. My husband's mother, Patricia Cole, stood near the donor wall in pearls and cream silk, looking satisfied in that quiet way only cruel people look when they believe humiliation has finally become official. And beside my husband stood Cassandra Vale, his new operations consultant. His favorite woman. His future, according to hospital gossip. She wore a white blazer, soft gold earrings, and a smile so gentle it felt rehearsed. My name is Naomi Bennett Cole. That was still my name that morning. I was 39 years old, holding a stack of patient access reports against my chest, standing in the lobby of the same hospital where I had spent 5 years rebuilding broken systems, reducing patient wait times, protecting staff from budget cuts, and keeping the place running when my husband was too busy giving speeches to notice the walls were cracking. The lobby smelled of antiseptic, coffee, and rain from the coats of people coming in through the sliding glass doors. The hospital lights were too bright. The floor was too clean. The silence was too loud. Adrian Cole, my husband and the hospital's public-facing chief executive, looked at me like I was an employee who had forgotten her place. You heard me, he said when I did not move. You're done here. My fingers tightened around the reports. Not because I was afraid, because if I let go, my hands might shake. Cassandra stepped closer to him and spoke softly, but loud enough for the front desk to hear. Adrian, maybe we should not make this harder than it has to be. Make this harder. As if I was the problem. As if I had walked into the lobby and fired myself. As if she had not spent the last 6 months whispering into his office, calling me outdated, emotional, resistant, difficult, and too attached to old systems. Old systems. That was what she called the patient assistance program that helped poor families get medication before they got worse. Old systems. That was what she called the nurses' emergency fund that stopped single mothers on staff from quitting after 1 bad month. Old systems. That was what she called the charity transport partnership that helped elderly patients get to dialysis. Anything that protected people without making rich donors clap was old to Cassandra. Adrian looked at security. Escort her to her office. One of the guards, Mr. Dennis, looked sick. He had worked there since before Adrian arrived. He knew me. He knew I brought coffee to night shift staff during system upgrades. He knew I had once driven his wife to an emergency appointment when their car failed outside the hospital. He knew I was not just Mrs. Cole. He was silent. Adrian noticed. Dennis, he snapped. Mr. Dennis swallowed. Yes, sir. He took 1 step toward me. That was when the elevator doors opened. Vivian Hart stepped out. My lawyer. She wore a dark green suit, carried a leather folder, and walked into the lobby with the calm of a woman who did not rush because the truth was already waiting for her. Beside her was Grace Monroe, my best friend and CFO, carrying her laptop bag like it contained both spreadsheets and judgment. Adrian's face changed. Only for a second. But I saw it. He had not expected them. Patricia's smile weakened. Cassandra's eyes narrowed. Vivian walked straight to me and stood at my side. Naomi, she said quietly. Did he say the words? I looked at her. Yes. Grace turned her head toward Adrian. In the lobby? Yes. Grace inhaled slowly. Oh, this is going to be educational. Adrian forced a laugh. Vivian, Grace, this is an internal hospital matter. Vivian smiled. No, Mr. Cole, it stopped being internal the moment you fired the owner in front of witnesses. The lobby went completely still. Adrian blinked. "What did you say?" Vivian opened the leather folder. "I said owner." Cassandra's smile disappeared. Patricia stepped forward. "That is absurd." Vivian turned one page and looked at her. "Mrs. Cole, absurd is a strong word for someone standing under a donor wall funded by a trust she never bothered to read." The word struck harder than shouting. Adrian looked at me. His voice lowered. "Naomi, what is she talking about?" I looked up at the hospital sign. Belmont Grace Hospital. Belmont. My mother's maiden name. Grace. My grandmother's middle name. For years, I had thought the name was only coincidence, a family joke, a hospital founded by old philanthropists with an emotional naming style. Until 3 nights earlier, when Vivian called me at 11:40 p.m. and said, "Naomi, sit down," I had sat. And then she told me the truth Adrian did not know. My late grandmother, Ruth Bennett, had once worked as a nurse at this hospital when it was still called Grace Memorial. Years later, after she married into the Belmont side through her mother's family, a hidden charitable trust was built to protect the hospital from being sold, stripped, or turned into a profit machine. That trust had quietly grown for decades. The paperwork was old, complicated, buried under layers of foundation structure, voting shares, charitable protections, and donor family rights. And when the final Belmont trustee passed away, control did not pass to Adrian. It passed to me, Naomi Bennett. The granddaughter Ruth had named in a sealed letter long before I ever married a man who thought this hospital belonged to his ambition. The hospital Adrian claimed to run was not his. The board seat he bragged about existed because the trust allowed him operational authority through marriage, reputation, and temporary appointment. But controlling ownership, protected voting rights, and final approval power belonged to the Belmont Grace Trust. And as of 3 days ago, Vivian had completed the verification. I owned the hospital, not emotionally, not symbolically, legally. Adrian did not know because he had never cared enough about the hospital's past to read beyond the office title on his door. Now he stood in the lobby, after firing me in front of everyone, discovering that he had just removed the person with the power to remove him. Vivian handed him the first page. "Mr. Cole, effective immediately. All employment actions against Naomi Bennett are void pending board review. Additionally, your authority as chief executive is suspended under Section 12 of the Belmont Grace Trust Governance Protections due to attempted unauthorized termination of the controlling trust representative." Adrian stared at the paper. His face drained. Cassandra whispered, "Adrian?" He did not answer. Grace looked at the lobby, then at the staff. Everyone should probably remember exactly where they were standing. Before I continue, tell me where you are watching from tonight. And if someone has ever tried to throw you out of a room they only entered because of you, stay with this story, because sometimes the place where they humiliate you is the place where your name is hidden in the foundation. I did not grow up dreaming of owning a hospital. I grew up learning how to wait in them. My father died when I was young, after a long illness that taught me how cruel healthcare could feel when money, paperwork, and fear all arrived at the same time. My mother cried in waiting rooms. My grandmother Ruth argued with billing departments. I sat in plastic chairs, swinging my legs, watching adults whisper about test results and balances. Hospitals scared me then. Not because of doctors, because of doors. So many doors. Doors to rooms where people spoke quietly. Doors to offices where bills were printed. Doors to places families could not enter. Doors that decided who waited, who was helped, who was ignored, and who understood what was happening. Grandma Ruth understood hospitals differently. She had been a nurse before I was born, back when nurses knew every patient's cousin, every doctor's temper, and every supply closet that needed fixing. She believed hospitals should be places where pain met dignity, not confusion. She used to tell me, "Naomi, when people are sick, they should not have to prove they deserve kindness." That sentence shaped me, even before I knew it. I studied business systems, not medicine. Numbers made sense to me. Processes made sense. Broken systems made me angry in a useful way. I built Bennett ClearPath Solutions to help clinics and hospitals fix operational problems that hurt real people. Late appointments, lost records, billing errors, supply shortages, staff burnout, long discharge delays. The invisible failures that turn care into suffering. That was how I met Adrian Cole. He was not yet a powerful hospital executive then. He was a charming healthcare consultant with a good smile, a rented office, and a talent for making weak ideas sound like destiny. We met at a regional health management conference. I had just finished presenting on patient flow improvement for underserved clinics. Adrian approached me afterward, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I don't usually enjoy logistics," he said, "but you made it sound like saving lives." I smiled. "It often is." He handed me the coffee. "I'm Adrian." "Naomi." He looked at me like my name mattered. That was dangerous. Men who listen well in the beginning can make you ignore what they refuse to hear later. Adrian admired me at first. He asked for my opinion, sent me proposals, invited me to review presentations. He said, "Naomi, you see what others miss." I believed him. When we married 4 years later, I thought we were partners. Different strengths. One vision. He had charisma. I had structure. He could charm donors. I could fix the systems that made donor money matter. When Belmont Grace Hospital approached Adrian for a leadership role, I encouraged him. The hospital was struggling. Old reputation, weak finances, tired staff, long patient wait times, outdated technology, donor fatigue, community mistrust. Adrian saw a chance to become important. I saw a chance to help repair something that felt connected to my childhood pain. He accepted the role, and I came with him. Not officially at first. I was still running my company, but I spent evenings and weekends reviewing hospital processes, interviewing staff, mapping patient flow, tracking discharge delays, analyzing supply waste, and identifying where money disappeared before reaching patients. Then the board asked me to take a formal operations advisory position. Part-time, then full-time, then essential. Adrian loved it when my work made him look brilliant. He praised me at home, called me his secret weapon, said I was the reason he slept at night. But publicly, he introduced me carefully. "My wife helps with operations." Helps, that word again. The soft little word people use to make major labor sound like kindness. I helped. That was what he said when I rebuilt the intake system and cut emergency room wait times by 32%. I helped when I found billing errors that had been sending low-income families into collections wrongly. I helped when I renegotiated supply contracts and saved the hospital millions. I helped when I created the night shift childcare fund after 3 nurses quit in 1 month. I helped when I stopped Cassandra's first proposal to close the free diabetes clinic because it did not align with the new profitability vision. At first, Adrian defended me. Then he stopped, because Cassandra arrived. Cassandra Vale was hired as a strategic modernization consultant. That was her title. Her real skill was making cruelty sound efficient. She came from a private healthcare investment firm, wore sleek suits, and used phrases like margin discipline, patient segmentation, donor optics, and legacy burden. Legacy burden. That was what she called poor people. Not directly. Never directly. People like Cassandra are too polished for obvious cruelty. She said the hospital needed to stop overextending into low-yield community obligations. I said, "You mean programs for people who can't pay?" She smiled. "I mean sustainability." "I know what you mean." She hated me from that meeting onward. Adrian liked her. Not openly at first, but enough. He said she brought fresh thinking. He said I was too emotional about community programs. He said I needed to understand executive realities. Executive realities. That was what people called moral surrender when they wanted to sound educated. Over 6 months, Cassandra gained access. First meetings, then strategy sessions, then private dinners with donors, then weekend retreats, then Adrian's phone lighting up after midnight. When I asked questions, he said I was insecure. When I challenged her proposals, he said I was territorial. When I pointed out that closing clinics would hurt patients, he said I was stuck in old thinking. Patricia, his mother, supported him. She had always liked power when it wore her son's face. At Sunday dinner, she said, "A hospital cannot be run like a charity kitchen, Naomi." I looked at her. "It is partly a charity hospital." She smiled tightly. That thinking is exactly why Adrian needs stronger voices around him. Stronger voices. By which she meant Cassandra. My younger sister Brianna warned me gently. "Naomi, something is changing." "I know." "Not just at work." "I know." "Do you have documents?" I almost laughed. Brianna had learned from Vivian and Grace. "Yes." "Good." Grace was less gentle. "He's trying to turn you into a problem before removing you," she said one night in my kitchen. I stared at her. "You think he'd fire me?" "I think Cassandra would. I think Patricia would bless it. I think Adrian would call it painful but necessary." That hurt, because it sounded exactly like him. Vivian told me to preserve everything. Emails, reports, meeting notes, program records, consultant proposals, board communications, employment agreements, trust documents. That last one came because she had noticed something odd in hospital governance files. "Belmont Grace has unusual structure," she said. "How unusual?" "Old trust language, protective voting rights, donor family restrictions." I'm digging. I was too tired then to ask deeper questions. I was fighting daily battles inside the hospital. Cassandra wanted to outsource housekeeping, cutting staff benefits. I blocked it. She wanted to close the charity transport program. I produced data showing missed appointments would rise and emergency admissions would cost more. She wanted to convert 2 community clinic spaces into premium wellness suites. I asked which patients she planned to displace. She said I was hostile. Adrian began documenting my resistance. I found that out later. He asked HR to note that I disrupted strategic meetings. He told department heads to route major proposals through Cassandra, not me. He removed me from 2 donor meetings, then 3. Then he announced a new restructuring committee. Cassandra would chair it. I would transition out of operational authority. No one said fired yet, but the word was already walking down the hallway. The night before the lobby humiliation, I found the final plan. Not because Adrian gave it to me, because an exhausted nurse named Lillian slipped an envelope under my office door. Inside was a printed agenda. Executive Restructuring Announcement. Item 4. Termination of Naomi Bennett Cole, Operations Director, effective immediately. Reason: leadership misalignment, resistance to modernization, breach of executive confidence. Breach of executive confidence. That was what they called refusing to harm patients quietly. I sat at my desk until midnight, staring at the paper. Then Vivian called. She had found the trust. The real trust. The Belmont Grace Trust. She explained slowly. My grandmother Ruth's mother had been born into the Belmont family line. Ruth had never been rich, but she had inherited a small protected interest connected to the original hospital foundation. Over time, through deaths, consolidations, neglected documents, and old charitable protections, that interest had grown into controlling trust authority. Ruth had preserved it quietly, then named me. Not because I was married to Adrian. Years before that, because she believed I would protect the hospital's original purpose. A sealed letter confirmed it. Naomi should know when the hospital forgets the poor. Those were Grandma Ruth's words. I cried when Vivian read them. Then Vivian said, "Tomorrow let him speak first." What? If he intends to fire you, let him do it publicly. We will already be there. Vivian. Naomi, he is trying to create a record of your removal. We will create a better record of his overreach. So I went to work the next morning. I walked into the hospital knowing something Adrian did not. Knowing he had a script. Knowing I had a deed of power hidden beneath his stage. Still, when he fired me in the lobby, it hurt. Knowledge does not make humiliation painless. It only gives pain somewhere to stand. After Vivian said the word owner, the hospital lobby remained frozen. Adrian held the trust document like it might bite him. "This is fake," he said. Vivian smiled. "That would be an exciting claim. Please make it in writing." Cassandra stepped forward. "There must be some misunderstanding. Adrian is CEO. Suspended CEO," Vivian said. "You cannot just suspend a hospital executive in a lobby." Grace looked around. "Apparently, you can fire the owner in one." Several nurses lowered their faces to hide smiles. Adrian noticed. His humiliation began turning into anger. "Naomi," he said, "tell them this is ridiculous." I looked at him. "You fired me in front of everyone. Because you forced my hand." "No." Cassandra guided it. "Patricia enjoyed it. You lifted it." Patricia gasped. "How dare you?" I turned to her. "Mrs. Cole, please don't perform shock in a hospital. People here know real emergencies." Her face went red. Vivian spoke again. "Mr. Cole, a special board session has been called for noon. Until then, you are instructed not to access executive systems, alter records, contact staff regarding this matter, or represent yourself as acting CEO." Adrian looked toward the board members standing near the donor wall. Some avoided his eyes. One of them, Dr. Samuel Reed, stepped forward. He was the oldest board member, a retired surgeon with kind eyes and a spine people often underestimated. "I received the trust documents this morning," Dr. Reed said. "We will meet at noon." Adrian stared at him. "You knew?" Dr. Reed replied. "I knew enough not to interrupt until you finished making the mistake." Grace whispered, "I like him." Cassandra tried to recover. "Fine, let the board review. But hospital operations cannot be controlled by emotional inheritance." Vivian turned slowly. "Ms. Vale, emotional inheritance is not the term. Controlling charitable trust is the term. But I understand why one sounds less convenient." Cassandra's mouth tightened. I finally stepped forward. Not much. Just enough that the lobby knew I was no longer standing where Adrian had placed me. "Everyone," I said, my voice shaking but clear, "please return to work. Patients need care. This hospital is not a theater." That moved people. Nurses shifted. Doctors walked toward elevators. Reception resumed. Patients were guided gently away from the tension. The hospital breathed again. Adrian watched it happen. Watched people respond to me. Not him. That hurt him more than the paper. By noon, the boardroom was full. Vivian sat beside me. Grace sat behind us with her laptop. Adrian sat across the table with his lawyer, though his lawyer looked like someone who had been called too late to stop a car from entering water. Cassandra sat near him, still polished but paler now. Patricia had no official reason to be there, but she came anyway and sat behind Adrian, clutching her handbag like a weapon. Dr. Reed opened the meeting. "We are here to address governance authority, executive conduct, and attempted termination of Naomi Bennett Cole." Adrian's lawyer said, "My client acted within executive authority regarding a disruptive employee." Vivian placed a stack of documents on the table. "My client is the controlling trust representative. Your client attempted to terminate her after months of documented retaliation against her objections to program cuts that may violate charitable purpose protections." Adrian leaned forward. "You are twisting this." I looked at him. "Did you approve my termination agenda?" He hesitated. "Answer carefully," Vivian said. His jaw tightened. "Yes." "Did you plan to announce it publicly?" "No." Grace lifted a paper. "The agenda says lobby announcement before staff transition meeting." Adrian shot Cassandra a look. Cassandra looked down. "Interesting." The board reviewed documents for hours. Trust authority, hospital history, my grandmother's letter, program protections, Cassandra's proposals, Adrian's emails, HR notes, financial projections, community impact reports. Then came the emails that changed the room completely. Grace had found them in discovery from internal shared files. An email from Cassandra to Adrian. Naomi must be removed before the premium conversion vote. Her emotional attachment to low-income programs will slow the donor repositioning strategy. Adrian replied, "Agreed. We need to frame termination as leadership misalignment, not program dispute." Another email. Once Naomi is out, Patricia can help manage donor optics. The old Belmont name carries nostalgia, but we need to control it. Control it. They did not know the Belmont name was about to control them. Dr. Reed's face darkened. The head of nursing, who had a non-voting seat, looked at Adrian like she wanted to throw him into a supply closet. Vivian asked, "Mr. Cole, did you intend to remove Naomi Bennett because she opposed closure of protected community programs?" Adrian said, "No." Vivian slid the email forward. "Would you like to revise that answer?" He did not speak. Cassandra tried to separate herself. These were strategy discussions. Hospitals require difficult decisions. I looked at her. Difficult for who? She blinked. For sustainability. No. Difficult for the patients losing transport. Difficult for nurses losing benefits. Difficult for families who need the diabetes clinic. Difficult for everyone except the executives calling cruelty strategy. The room was quiet. That was the first time I spoke with my full anger in the boardroom. It felt like opening a window in a burning house. The board voted before sunset. Adrian's executive authority was suspended pending investigation. Cassandra's contract was frozen. All restructuring plans tied to her proposals were paused. My role was reinstated and expanded under trust authority. A temporary governance committee was created, with Dr. Reed, Vivian, myself, and 2 independent healthcare compliance experts. Patricia stormed out before the final vote. Adrian remained seated, staring at the table. When the meeting ended, he approached me in the hallway. Vivian stepped between us. He looked over her shoulder. "Naomi, please." I said nothing. "We need to talk," Vivian said, "through counsel." He ignored her. "You let them humiliate me." I almost laughed. "You fired me in the lobby." That was different. How? I didn't know. There it was. The whole truth of him. He would not have done it if he knew I had power. Not because it was wrong, because it was unsafe. I looked at him. "That is exactly why you should not have done it." I walked away. The days after the board meeting were chaotic. Hospital gossip moved faster than infection control notices. Some people avoided me because they did not know what to say. Others hugged me in hallways. Nurse Lillian cried when I thanked her for the envelope. "I was scared," she said. "So was I. But you came anyway. So did you. That mattered. We protected each other in different ways. Mr. Dennis, the security guard Adrian ordered to escort me, came to my office. He stood at the doorway, hat in hand. "Mrs. Cole." "Naomi," I said gently. He nodded. "Naomi, I'm sorry." "For what specifically?" I asked softly. "For taking that step toward you." I knew it was wrong, but he was my boss. I looked at him. "You stopped after one step." He swallowed. "I should not have moved at all." That honesty touched me. "Thank you for saying that." He nodded and left. I made sure his job was safe, not because he was perfect, because fear should not be punished the same as cruelty. Cassandra resigned before investigation could fully remove her. Her resignation letter used words like alignment, transition, and strategic divergence. Vivian read it and said, she found a thesaurus in a burning building. Grace created a private folder titled Strategic Nonsense and put it there. Adrian fought longer. He claimed I had manipulated trust documents. He claimed Vivian had ambushed him. He claimed the board overreacted. He claimed I had always wanted his job. Then the investigation revealed more. He had allowed Cassandra access to confidential planning documents beyond her contract. He had hidden community impact warnings. He had pressured HR to document false concerns about me. He had discussed donor repositioning in ways that violated trust protections. He had used hospital foundation events to promote outside partnerships tied to Cassandra's firm. Not illegal in every case, but enough. Enough to show character. Enough to remove him. 3 months after the lobby firing, Adrian Cole was formally terminated as CEO of Belmont Grace Hospital. Not in the lobby. In a closed board meeting with documentation, legal review, and more dignity than he had given me. That was my choice. Grace asked why. He didn't deserve privacy. No, I said, but the hospital deserved professionalism. That was the difference between revenge and leadership. I wanted justice. Not infection. My marriage ended soon after. The divorce was painful, though not surprising. Adrian moved out first, then tried to come back, then blamed Cassandra, then blamed pressure, then blamed me for choosing a hospital over a marriage. In mediation, he said, "You changed after you found out about the trust." I looked at him. "No, Adrian. You changed when you thought I had no power." I only found proof. He had no answer. Patricia called once, trying to defend him. "My son made mistakes, but you destroyed his career." I replied, "No. He tried to destroy mine and discovered where he was standing." She hung up. Months later, she sent a letter. Not an apology, a performance. Vivian skimmed it and said, "This is not accountability. This is calligraphy with blame." I threw it away. Cassandra disappeared into another consulting firm. For a while, she rebranded herself online as a human-centered healthcare strategist. Grace sent me the screenshot. I deleted it. Some people do not repent. They update their profiles. The hospital work became harder after Adrian left. That surprised people. They thought ownership meant power, and power meant ease. It did not. The hospital still had debt, old systems, staff burnout, community needs, board tensions, insurance problems, supply issues, a building wing that needed repair. But now the work was honest. We restored the community clinic funding, protected staff benefits, expanded the transport program, created a patient billing review office so families would not drown in errors, opened a staff child care partnership, built a community advisory board with actual patients, not just donors. Grace helped restructure finances. Vivian cleaned governance. Dr. Reed chaired the ethics committee. Nurse Lillian became director of patient access. Mr. Dennis trained security staff on dignity protocols. People laughed at that title at first. Then they understood. Security is often the first face frightened families see. Dignity belongs there too. 1 year after the lobby firing, Belmont Grace Hospital held a reopening ceremony for the community clinic. Not a gala, not a donor theater, a real ceremony. Patients came, staff came, families came. There was music, food, speeches, and a ribbon cut by 3 people. Nurse Lillian, Dr. Reed, and Mrs. Alvarez, a diabetic patient who had once missed appointments because she could not get transport. I stood at the back, watching. Grace came beside me. "You should be up front." "I'm fine here." "No, you're hiding." "I'm observing." "You own a hospital. Learn the difference." I smiled. Vivian appeared on my other side. "Grace is right. That must be painful for you to admit." "Deeply." Then Dr. Reed called my name. "Naomi Bennett, please come forward." Bennett. Not Cole. My divorce had finalized the month before. Hearing my name without his attached to it felt like a door opening. I walked forward slowly. People clapped. Not like investors. Not like donors. Like staff. Like patients. Like people who knew the work. Dr. Reed handed me the microphone. I looked at the clinic doors. Then at the crowd. Then at the hospital sign. Belmont Grace. "My grandmother Ruth once told me," I said, "that when people are sick, they should not have to prove they deserve kindness." My voice shook. I let it. This hospital forgot that for a while. Some of us forgot it in budget meetings. Some forgot it in boardrooms. Some forgot it while chasing applause. But the staff here did not forget. The patients did not forget. And today, we make a promise that Belmont Grace will never again measure human dignity only by what a person can pay. People clapped. Some cried. Nurse Lillian wiped her face. Mr. Dennis looked at the ceiling. Grace cried and denied it. Vivian definitely did not cry, according to Vivian. After the ceremony, an elderly woman touched my hand. "Your grandmother would be proud," she said. "Did you know her?" She smiled. Everyone knew Nurse Ruth. That almost broke me. Nurse Ruth. Grandma had been more than family memory. She had been hospital memory, and somehow, through paper, patience, and a sealed letter, she had brought me back to protect what she loved. The hospital became my life for a while. Not all my life. That was important. Women like me can turn rescue into identity if we are not careful. Therapy helped. Dr. Elaine, my therapist, asked, "Who are you when nobody needs you?" I hated that question, so we worked on it for months. I learned to have mornings without crisis, evenings without emails, friends without emergencies, a home without Adrian's voice, a name without Cole. I learned that owning the hospital did not mean I had to bleed for it. Leadership was not martyrdom. That lesson took longer than the legal one. I started the Belmont Ruth Fellowship 2 years later. It trained women in healthcare operations, ethics, community care, and nonprofit governance, especially women whose work had been dismissed as help while men received titles. The fellowship became one of my proudest achievements. Vivian taught governance. Grace taught financial transparency. Nurse Lillian taught patient access. Dr. Reed taught ethics. I taught a session called "Never Let Them Call Your Labor Support When It Is Structure." Women came from hospitals, clinics, care homes, nonprofits, and family businesses. They had stories. A wife who ran her husband's clinic for 10 years without a title. A daughter who managed her father's pharmacy and watched her brother become owner. A nurse whose program was stolen by an executive. A billing specialist blamed for problems she had warned leadership about. A hospital administrator pushed out for opposing cuts to poor patients. Different places, same wound. Useful women erased when power wanted a cleaner story. At the first fellowship dinner, I told them about the lobby. Not dramatically. Honestly. "My husband fired me in front of everyone," I said. "He thought shame would remove me. He did not know my grandmother had already placed my name where shame could not reach." A woman in the front row whispered, "Amen." I smiled. Documents matter, but so does memory. Keep both. Years passed. Belmont Grace became stronger. Not perfect. Hospitals are never perfect. But safer, kinder, more accountable. We published community impact reports, held open forums, created staff protection channels, protected charitable care, balanced finances without cutting the heart out of the hospital. Donors who only wanted shiny naming rights left. Good. New donors came because they believed in the mission. Better. One wing was renovated and named the Ruth Bennett Patient Access Center. I stood under the sign on opening day and cried so hard Grace had to hand me tissues. Vivian said, "Your grandmother's ghost is now legally unavoidable." I laughed through tears. Adrian came back into the story once. 3 years after the divorce, he requested a meeting. I almost said no, then agreed to a short one in Vivian's office. He looked older. Not destroyed, just smaller without applause. He sat across from me and said, "I'm sorry." I waited. "For what specifically?" I asked. He closed his eyes. "For firing you in the lobby. For letting Cassandra convince me that your care was weakness. For using your work when it helped me and calling it resistance when it challenged me. For humiliating you because I thought you had no power. For not reading the hospital's history because I thought my title was enough." That was specific. It did not heal everything, but truth has a sound when it finally stops running. I asked, "Why did you do it?" He looked at his hands. "Because you made the hospital love you without trying. I had the title, but people trusted you." Cassandra told me removing you would make me stronger. I wanted to believe her because I was tired of being compared to your competence. I sat still. You were jealous. Yes. And afraid. Yes. And cruel. He swallowed. Yes. I nodded. I hear you. Do you forgive me? I looked at him for a long moment. I no longer need the hospital to punish you. He flinched. That's not the same? No. He accepted that. Growth, maybe. Or exhaustion. Either way, the meeting ended. As he left, he paused at the door. Naomi. Yes? You were the best thing that happened to that hospital. I held his eyes. I know. And I did. That was the healing. Not that he said it. That I did not need him to. My husband said, "You are fired." In front of everyone. Unaware I owned the hospital. People love the twist. They love Vivian walking out of the elevator. They love Adrian's face when the word owner entered the lobby. They love Cassandra losing her smile. They love Patricia standing under the donor wall with nothing to say. They love the board meeting, the emails, the suspension, the reversal. I understand. It is satisfying. But the deeper story is not about a powerful woman surprising a cruel man. It is about stewardship. It is about what happens when people treat institutions like stages instead of shelters. It is about women whose labor holds up buildings while men stand outside for photos. It is about the difference between title and trust. Adrian had the title. I had the trust. And trust, in the end, carried more weight. If you are listening and someone is trying to remove you from something you helped build, do not panic first. Document first. Save emails. Keep reports. Track contributions. Know the bylaws. Read the trust. Understand the ownership. Keep copies outside the office. Talk to a lawyer before the hallway becomes a battlefield. Do not believe people who call your memory bitterness. Do not believe people who call your evidence drama. Do not believe people who say you are too emotional, when what they mean is you still care about the people their plan will hurt. Care is not weakness. Care without structure can be dangerous, but care with authority can change a hospital, a company, a family, a life. And if they fire you in front of everyone, breathe. Look around. Remember who knows the truth. Remember what your hands built. Remember that humiliation is loud, but paper can be louder. Then stand still long enough for the elevator doors to open. Today, Belmont Grace Hospital still stands. The lobby is the same lobby, but I no longer feel small when I walk through it. The golden sign still shines. The front desk still smells faintly of coffee. Nurse Lillian still tells new staff the story of why dignity protocols matter. Mr. Dennis still nods at me every morning. Dr. Reed still argues with me about budgets like a man who enjoys being difficult for the right reasons. Grace still says she wants a plaque in the lobby that reads, "Do not fire the owner." Vivian says that is legally unnecessary but emotionally appealing. I have not approved it. Yet. In my office, I keep Grandma Ruth's sealed letter framed behind my desk. One line is underlined. Naomi should know when the hospital forgets the poor. I know now. And because I know, I do not forget. My name is Naomi Bennett. My husband fired me in front of everyone. But the hospital he tried to use as his stage had my grandmother's promise hidden in its bones. He thought he was removing an employee. He was exposing himself to the owner. And the day he told me to clear out my office became the day Belmont Grace finally remembered who it was built to serve.